Deep along the spine of the Annamite Mountains, where mist clings to ridgelines and the jungle seems to swallow every sound, a lifeline took shape that would alter the course of the Vietnam War. The world came to call it the Ho Chi Minh Trail. But trail is misleading. It was never a single path. It was a shifting, expanding transportation system, roads and footpaths, river crossings and mountain passes, storage depots and relay stations, woven through some of the hardest terrain in Southeast Asia. It ran not only within Vietnam, but across the borders of Laos and Cambodia, forming a strategic network designed to survive pressure, conceal movement, and keep supplies flowing even when the sky above was filled with aircraft. In 1959, the North Vietnamese organized the forces responsible for opening and managing this strategic route under a unit known as Group 559, a date widely treated as the trail's formal beginning. Early movement depended heavily on human labor, porters carrying loads through forests and over ridges, couriers guiding small groups from station to station, and local knowledge of water, weather, and the hidden logic of the land. In those years, the war's front lines were not only where armies met, but also in the mountains where endurance became a weapon. The network grew step by step, with relay points to rest, repair, hide, and redistribute cargo. It was built to be flexible. If one corridor became dangerous, another would open. If a bridge was destroyed, a crossing would be rebuilt or bypassed. If a route was exposed, movement would shift into deeper cover. As the conflict escalated in the mid-1960s, the trail's importance multiplied. Expanding the network through Laos and Cambodia added depth and complexity, making it far harder to sever with a single strike. It also transformed those border regions into a vast battleground. The effort to stop the flow of men and material became one of the most intense logistical struggles of modern warfare. Surveillance aircraft searched for traces of movement. Sensors and reconnaissance attempted to map patterns in the jungle. Ground raids and ambushes targeted key points. And above all, sustained air campaigns sought to break the system by constant destruction, cratering roads, collapsing bridges, and striking depots whenever they could be found. Yet the trail did not operate like a convoy on a highway. Its strength came from dispersion, camouflage, and rhythm. Cargo moved in short stages, passed from one unit to another, stored and reshuffled, then pushed forward again when the moment was right. In many sectors, bicycles modified for heavy loads and human porters remained crucial because they could travel quietly, leave fewer signatures, and move where trucks could not. Where roads permitted, trucks increased their role, often driving at night, under canopy cover, with lights off, guided by markers only the drivers understood. Temporary bridges were thrown across streams, repaired under fire, then rebuilt again after the next strike. In this system, damage rarely meant defeat. It meant delay, adaptation, and the relentless search for a new way through. By the late 1960s and into the early 1970s, the network grew more sophisticated. Among its most significant developments was the construction of fuel pipelines, reducing reliance on carrying fuel in containers along vulnerable routes and improving the ability to support mechanized forces. But even with roads, trucks, and pipelines, the decisive element was always people. The road builders and repair crews, the couriers, the security units, the medical teams who moved the wounded, and the workers who kept stations supplied and hidden. They labored in harsh conditions, humidity, disease, mud that could swallow wheels, and the constant risk of attack. Many did not return. The cost of sustaining the lifeline was paid in exhaustion and lives, in a war where the boundary between front and rear often dissolved into a single bend in the forest. On the other side, interdiction efforts grew in scale and technology. Air power focused on choke points, river crossings, depots, staging areas, and stretches of road that were hardest to conceal. Some periods saw continuous strikes aimed at making transportation too dangerous, too slow, and too expensive to maintain. But the terrain itself shaped the contest. Dense vegetation and rugged mountains could hide movement, but they also punished those who traveled through them. Camouflage was not simply covering trucks with leaves. It was an entire discipline of timing and deception, moving in bad weather to reduce visibility, shifting routes to avoid predictable patterns, traveling when
Smoke incoming,
surveillance
clear
was
the way.
weakest and rebuilding faster than the damage could accumulate.
Pack it tight.
The battle
Vehicle's
over the
clear.
trail
Next
became a
trailer.
long duel between interruption and persistence, between attempts to cut an artery and the system's ability to reroute blood. The Ho Chi Minh Trail was also tied to the war's major turning points. Large operations required a steady flow of supplies, replacements, and equipment. Logistics rarely wins a war through a single dramatic moment, but it determines how long a force can fight, how well it can recover, and whether it can shift from survival to sustained offensive pressure. In that sense, the trail was not merely a route.
Eagle 1,
It was an
bandits inbound,
expression
request
of
immediate
organization and
support. Copy, Eagle 1,
willpower,
body
an
expected now.
engineered answer to a
Closing fast, fire
strategic
support
problem.
now.
How to sustain a
Interdiction
distant
confirmed, holding
conflict
position.
under the most punishing form of modern interdiction. As the war moved toward its final phase, the years of expansion, branches cut into hillsides, depots hidden in valleys, crossings rebuilt countless times, formed a foundation for faster movement when the situation demanded it. Even as bombing scarred the landscape and environmental damage left long shadows, the system continued to function until the conflict ended in 1975. In the aftermath, the trail remained in memory as both achievement and tragedy, a symbol of resilience and ingenuity under extreme conditions, and a reminder of the immense human and ecological cost of war. Today, when people speak of the Ho Chi Minh Trail, what endures is not only a line on a map. It is the recognition that behind every battlefield decision lies an invisible world of supply and movement. It is the understanding that in the darkness of forests and mountains, history can be shaped by quiet labor, by hands that cleared paths, repaired bridges, carried burdens, and kept going when the risk was constant and the outcome uncertain. Between the trees of the Truong Sun Range and the firestorm of modern warfare, the Ho Chi Minh Trail became one of the 20th century's most defining logistical systems, alive, adaptive, and etched deeply into the story of the Vietnam War.